Before I was ever a researcher or a college professor, I was an elementary school teacher. And I say that with pride. I was an elementary school teacher. And I was teaching in what many would call an underperforming school, filled with black and brown faces. And I had a connection to my students, a rich connection. And I thought that connection had everything to do with skin color. Until I realized and dug a little bit deeper to find out that that connection was hip hop. And this connection that I had with my students was not just the music of hip hop, it was the culture of hip hop. And I saw my students do amazing and incredible things in the classroom, strictly bringing their culture into the classroom. And to many people, the outside person will look at my classroom and say, there's no learning going on there. It is loud. It is not academic. And I saw it as organized noise. I saw it as kids using everything that they had to learn. So what do I mean by that? I'm sure many of you, if you're a teacher, you have walked into a classroom, especially with students who identify with hip hop culture, and they are banging away on a table, just banging. And you ask a child, could you please stop? And they look at you like, I'm not banging on the table. And so then you're having this moment to yourself saying, I just saw you bang on the table. And then 5 seconds later, they're banging on the table again. But what they're doing, they're drumming. They are honing in on their African and African American spirit. Or you have seen a child walking down the street with no headphones on, bobbing like this, talking to themselves. And you're thinking to yourself, is this child crazy? But what they're actually doing is they're a soundtrack playing in their bodies. And they are responding to that soundtrack. So when I was in my classroom, I saw students construct masterful narratives using rap, using poetry. I saw young girls use their entire body to learn and see knowledge as an embodied practice. And so what I was seeing in the classroom is that, yes, my students were learning differently. And there are many, many educators who have said this. Yes, some of these students do learn differently, but that does not mean they are deficient. That does not mean they are deficient. And these experiences brought me out of the classroom into a PhD program. Because I was thinking to myself, okay, how can I do this over and over again? How can I make this happen? How can I scale this? How can I have students be in hip hop culture, identify with hip hop, and they are in every classroom, everywhere? So I had big goals. Hip hop everywhere. But what I learned is that my students weren't just doing hip hop. They were actually participating in their cultural DNA, or what Malcolm Gladwell would call their cultural legacy. That the traditions and the customs of hip hop are actually African and African American customs. And that hip hop, when you see hip hop, it is the latest iteration of Black genius. It is the newest thing of what you see of people creating a culture out of nothing. But it isn't nothing. It goes back generations and generations. So my students, they don't even know it, but they are tapping into their cultural legacy to learn. And so if they have a cultural legacy, if this is Black genius, and if they have a way of being, then they have what scholar Regina Bradley calls hip-hop sensibilities. And that is a way of knowing, a way of being, a way of thinking. And I wanted to argue today that those hip-hop sensibilities are directly linked to predictors of success. So there's fascinating work right now from people like Angela Duckworth, Tony Wagner, Paul Tough, about what they call character strengths or mindsets. And I think this research is really fascinating about our grittiest kids, kids who have social and emotional intelligence, and how they're able to achieve. And these are some of these predictors of success. And when I look at this list, social and emotional intelligence, the ability to improv, curiosity, optimism, grit, I look at this list and I say, oh, that's hip hop. Is that how we're going to measure success? Because if that's how we're going to measure success, oh, I got some people for you. I got some kids for you. Let's think about this. hip hop. And let me back a little bit. I'm not